I am your cousin Bobby. And before we start tonight, I'm going to recap what happened in the past few episodes for the next 45 minutes. So first we watched...
Bobby, no!
Okay, after a quick meeting with my producer, we've decided to nix that bit. But if you loved the sound of an extended recap over the course of this episode, then you're going to love our movie tonight. The Robot versus the Aztec Mummy. The third chapter in the Aztec Mummy trilogy, this film spends 45 minutes of its 65-minute runtime recapping the events of the previous two films. Well, it seemed to me that such an oddball movie deserves an assist from a friend. So today, I'll be interviewing local film critic and historian Mark Clark, author of 60s Shockers and the Star Wars and Star Trek FAQ books. Mark, welcome to the Dead Zone.
Thanks, Bobby. Glad to be here.
So, since this movie is mostly a recap, is there really any need to see the first two movies, The Aztec Mummy and The Curse of the Aztec Mummy? Well, what is the story behind the filming of this trilogy?
Well, unless you're a huge fan, there's really not a burning reason to see the first two movies. The first Aztec Mummy film has about 20 minutes of kind of kooky fun, monster action in it, swimming around, and 45 minutes of like people talking to each other and other boring stuff. And then the second one has another 20 minutes of interesting stuff, but 15 minutes recapping the first movie of the good stuff from that movie, and then some other boring stuff. And then this one has all the good stuff from the first two movies, plus some other actually fun stuff. So from a bang for your buck perspective, you basically get all the good stuff in this one movie with as little of the dross as possible. These movies were made in Mexico, of course. They were all made close together in 1957. It was a time when in the United States, classic supernatural horror movies had kind of fallen by the wayside in favor of science fiction, horror kind of movies like The Thing and Them and any number of other things. But the old-fashioned horror movies were still doing great business in Mexico. And these movies were an attempt to try to replicate the success that Universal Studios had with their mummy films from the 1940s with the mummy Karras, who was played by cowboy actor Tom Tyler and then by Lon Chaney Jr. in 3 movies. The same director, Rafael Portillo, and most of the same crew and the same cast worked on these movies over the course of basically a few months together and trying to just replicate the appeal of the Universal movies, which were themselves made pretty cheaply and that. So they figured it'd be a natural thing to be able to emulate.
Right. So what were Mexican horror movies like? Does this film or its predecessors contain any of the hallmarks of Mexican horror?
Well, there were a bunch of horror movies made in Mexico, and they kind of, from this era, they kind of fall into one of 3 different categories. There was one set of them that were done with a lot of atmosphere and style. They were kind of in the same manner as the Val Lewton thrillers from the 1940s, which were kind of classy, atmospheric things like The Curse of the Crying Woman, or The Witch's Mirror, El Vampiro, those kind of movies. The Robot versus the Aztec Mummy is not one of those movies.
It's not a surprise.
There was also this other stream of Mexican horror that was just all about just coming up with the craziest, kookiest ideas they could invent, and using crazy makeups and costumes and lots of action, and it had more of a like a old-fashioned serial or so everything in the kitchen sink thrown at you kind of approach to things.
Right.
And the classic example of that form is probably the Brainiac, which is this movie about a brain-eating monster from outer space that comes to Earth on a meteor, and it gets crazy from there. But But the Robot versus the Aztec Mummy is very much in that style of movie, which is maybe not as good in terms of quality,
Right.
And in an objective sense as the other films we were talking about, but are just a blast to watch because they're so off the wall.
Right.
And then also in the off the wall category, we have the Mexican wrestling films with El Santo and those characters, the different luchadors, who did a lot of their movies. Not all of their movies crossed over into horror territory, but often they did, and they would fight Frankenstein or Dracula, whoever, and that's another, the other third kind of stream of Mexican horror.
Right. All right, Cleveland, it's time for some Mummy on Robot action. We'll be back with Mark at the first break, but in the meantime, grab a nice brandy and take notes so you can explain the entire thing to your friends later, and prepare yourself for The Robot versus the Aztec Mummy.
We heard a strange shuffling noise that was coming in our direction. And then out of the darkness appeared the ghastly and terrifying Popoca. The Aztec warrior had come back to life. Come back to life to retrieve the objects that had been left in his care for eternity.
So Mark, during these breaks, we'll ask some rapid fire questions. First, who is your favorite monster from a Mexican horror film?
Got to be the Brainiac.
Oh yeah,
Has to be you have the nose, the tongue.
The
It's
tongue
the
is
tongue
fantastic.
sucks the brains right out of your head.
Oh, so good, so good. We'll be right back.
Open-minded people.
The spirit of innovation.
Passion.
Action. Rock and roll. Cleveland.
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 Cleveland. Cleveland.
We are Cleveland.
All right, now, favorite luchador to appear in a Mexican film?
It's got to be El Santo.
Oh, of course, Hidalgo, Mexico's best. Back to The Robot versus the Aztec Mummy.
Let's put out the lights. I have an idea. I don't think he can stand it. Turn them on. Shine them in his face. Turn them off again. Lights again. You better run. I'll follow you.
This is the house.
Do you really think this plan of yours is gonna work, Doc?
You'll see. Now, I want you to be quiet. Keep still and don't make the slightest noise. Flora, it is my wish that you come to my side. Flora, I command you to come to me. Flora, I command you to come to me.
Okay, next question. Since you literally wrote the book on 60s horror films, favorite horror film from the 60s?
Just one? Okay, Night of the Living Dead.
Oh, classic, classic. And tell you what, go ahead and name some of your other favorite ones.
Well, there's Rosemary's Baby, The Haunting, the 1963 Robert Wise movie, Black Sunday, the Mario Bava movie. I mean, I could go on and on.
Excellent taste, my friend. Excellent taste. We'll be right back.
A lot of drug abuse messages are full of statistics. How many people die, how many lives are ruined, how much drug use is costing the economy. But this message isn't about numbers. It's about crack. And the message is simple. Crack can kill you. I won't bore you with the statistics, except to say that it's not worth becoming one for a 10-minute high.
Okay, favorite horror movie of all time?
Just one?
Come on, gun to your head. Mine's Creepshow.
shoot
Is that
me.
so hard?
I know a guy that worked on Creepshow.
Oh,
a friend
fantastic.
Of mine. Okay. Today I'm gonna say Island of Lost Souls.
Ah, yes.
I'm old school.
Yeah.
But,
Are we
you know-
not? Are we not men?
Yeah, indeed. Ask me tomorrow, I'll give you a different answer.
Oh, probably. Not the same here. It's Creepshow forever for me. All right, let's see how the recap is going. Back to the robot versus the Aztec mummy.
What are you doing here? Answer me! What are you doing here? Come now, Flora. Come on, we must hurry. Freeze, you two.
Dr. Armada. What a pleasant surprise.
Bruno?
A souvenir of the mummy. The boss is going to be very happy to say hello to you two again. Come along.
All right, Mark. Very important. Who is your favorite Scream Queen?
I'm gonna say Jamie Lee Curtis.
Oh, excellent choice, excellent choice. All right, let's say, and setting all the Halloween movies aside, obviously, out of the Jamie Lee Curtis horror movies, The Fog, Terror Train, Road Games, Prom Night, you only can pick one to survive forever. The rest go off into the abyss. Which one do you save?
Oh, The Fog.
Oh, yes,
Underrated.
excellent choice, for sure. Gotta love those zombie pirates. All right, we'll be right back.
Need food? We can help. The Greater Cleveland Food Bank's Benefits Outreach Department works within the community to help individuals locate food and apply for SNAP and other public benefits. Weekdays, our help center accepts phone calls from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. and walk-ins from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Call 216-738-2067 or stop in our facility at 15500 South Waterloo Road. Our benefits outreach counselors are out in the community every day assisting with benefit enrollment and connecting the community to vital resources. Keep your eye out for our food truck, providing free, fresh produce and SNAP enrollment in the community. For more information, visit www.greaterclevelandfoodbank.org/gethelp.
Okay, final rapid fire question. You are facing an entire horde of Aztec mummies. Which horror hero do you choose to have by your side?
I think I got to go with Ash from the Evil Dead, especially if he's got that chainsaw thing on his hand.
He can cut off entire horde of them, entire untold millions. I believe that we are finally due for the match of the century. Back to the robot versus the Aztec mummy.
Oh, this is great, Doctor! The greatest invention!
All right, with the Aztec mummy tearing apart the robot like the tin foil he is made of, it's time for more interview. Mark, would you tell us some about the stars of the film?
Sure, yeah. Let's start with Ramon Gay, who was Dr. Almada. He was born in Mexico City in 1917 and was a major star during the golden age of Mexican cinema. He appeared in more than 90 movies, and unfortunately, though, his career and his life ended a few years after this movie was made because he got involved in a romantic dispute over the affections of an actress named Evangelina Elizondo and was murdered. Another interesting thing about him is that through the magic of stock footage, he appears in a movie called Face of the Screaming Werewolf, which was cobbled together by hack producer Jerry Warren in the 1960s using footage from the first Aztec Mummy movie as well as a different Mexican horror film called House of Terror. The interesting thing about that is House of Terror featured Lon Chaney Jr., so he shows up in Face of the Screaming Werewolf. And of course, Lon Chaney Jr. played the mummy Karras, who they were trying to copy off of and emulate when they made the Aztec Mummy movies.
Right, so just recycling footage all over the place here. Okay, now how about some dirt on K. Gordon Murray, the distributor of these three films, the U.S. distributor of these three films?
Well, most of us who know these movies know them because of K. Gordon Murray. He took a bunch of, bought up a bunch of these Mexican horror films in the late 60s and early 1970s, dubbed them into English, and released them directly to television in the United States. It was a time when finding programming for local TV stations was difficult. The networks provided a certain number of hours of programming a day, and then lots of stations just had to fill time running old movies. So it was a big market for that sort of thing. And he imported lots of those movies. The dubbing wasn't always the best. They kind of were on the level of like the American version of a Toho Godzilla movie or something.
Right.
But he didn't mess with the movies that much, and so we're grateful that he did that. He also imported a lot of these oddball Mexican kids movies with like Puss in Boots and Little Red Riding Hood, and which were, if anything, even weirder than the horror movies.
Oh my goodness.
His most successful film was this 1960 Mexican film called Santa Claus, which is truly bizarre. If you've not seen that,
Right.
you should check out.
Right. Oh my goodness.
Murray himself was a character. He was born in Bloomington, Illinois, in 1922, and at that time, a lot of circus people wintered in Bloomington for some reason. And so he grew up around all these circus people and got bitten by the show business bug, but unfortunately he had no discernible talent. He couldn't act or sing or dance or presumably juggle or tame lions or anything else.
That doesn't stop some of us. That doesn't stop some of us.
Well, that's true. And it didn't stop him either. He wound up helping cast some of the little people that appeared as Munchkins in The Wizard of Oz.
Okay.
And then after he graduated from Illinois State, he went out to Hollywood and got a job promoting the Cecil B. DeMille circus picture, The Greatest Show on Earth. But he could never really find steady employment there because, again, he couldn't really do anything. So eventually he moved to Miami, which is where he got into he got the idea of importing these movies and packaging them for TV, and he made a lot of money at that. But unfortunately, he didn't keep up with his taxes, and so the IRS came after him and confiscated his films and prevented them from being shown for a while. And while he was in the middle of all this, he had a heart attack and died in 1979.
Oof. Yeah. Ugh. So, is there any relation between this movie we showed tonight and The Wrestling Women versus the Aztec Mummy?
Well, that movie was made about 7 years after this one. It was scripted by a guy named Guillermo Calderon, who's the same guy who wrote the 3 Aztec Mummy movies, including the one we're watching tonight. But the Mummy has a different name, and so theoretically it's not related to this series. It actually plays more like a parody of these movies, which is kind of weird because this movie doesn't take itself that seriously in the first place.
Right. Can't parody a parody. Doesn't work out. All right. So, final question, Mark. What are some Mexican horror films you would recommend?
Oh, well, I've already mentioned Curse of the Crying Woman, which I really enjoy, and The Brainiac, which absolutely has to be, seen to be, believed. But then, since this era of Mexican horror movies, there's been lots more made down there. There was a great one in 1977 called Alucarda. Santa Sangre from 1989, and of course the early Guillermo del Toro movies like The Devil's Backbone and Kronos. There's a long, rich history of Mexican horror cinema. I mean, I could go on all day.
Right. Well, unfortunately, we don't have all day, and that's all the time we have for tonight. Mark, my friend, thank you for your time. What are you working on now? Where can we find your writing?
Well, right now I'm finishing up a book on horror movies from the 1940s, which has been an interesting project because it's enabled me to see these really primal movies, horror movies, like first horror movies made in places like Spain and Argentina, India, Czechoslovakia, and of course all the other great horror movies made in the United States and England during the war years. So that's been really fascinating, and you can get, it'll be a while before that one's out, but my other books are out there, and you can get them at Amazon or Barnes & Noble or wherever you like to buy books.
Right. Thanks again, Mark. Cleveland, remember that you can email me at cousinbobby216@gmail.com, and make sure to follow me on Facebook and Twitter. A huge thanks to my production partner, Pat Longbreak, the rest of the crew here at TV20, and our graphic designer, Jeff Agneberg. Good night, Cleveland, and remember, recap all of your adventures to your friends, especially the ones that were there with you. Sweet dreams.